Last October, I wrote a letter to my father. I wrote the letter as part of an assignment for a relationship retreat that I was going to, and I didn't take it very seriously at first. To be honest, I didn't think I'd have much to say to a man I'd never really met, to a man whose face I hadn't seen since I was a baby. But, of course, as soon as I sat down to write, I couldn't stop. Page after page after page came pouring out of me as I finally shared with him how I felt and who I had become over the past 30 years. But growing up, I never really identified as a fatherless daughter. I thought it was weird to say he abandoned me when he left long before I could form any real, tangible memory of him. And I hated to dwell on the fact that he hadn't been there because I felt like that might somehow negate how much my incredible mother had been. And I really, really didn't want to admit that I might have daddy issues. Because I thought, if you can't remember the space a person took up in your life, is it possible for them to leave a hole? Can you really miss someone you never knew? I didn't used to think so. I didn't used to think my dad played any significant role in my life. And I didn't want to think that his absence had any effect on how it turned out, on how I turned out. But here's the thing. From the moment every single one of us came into this world, we've been trying to make sense of it and figure out where we fit in. So every experience, every interaction, even every offhanded comment that gets directed our way, gets cataloged, categorized, and cultivated into these stories that dictate who we think we are and how we think we should show up in the world. So whether I liked it or not, my dad did play a significant role in my life because I used his absence to author the stories I told myself about myself and how I should show up in the world. Around my 12th birthday, my mom bought me one of those dolls designed to look like me. She had smooth brown skin, dark almond-shaped eyes. I got to pick out her clothes and her accessories and even a little toy pet too. But what I love most about my new doll were the books. She came with a set of 6 books with pre-assigned themes like the school book where your doll learns a lesson, or the holiday book where she encounters some sort of surprise. But the best part about these books is that they were blank inside. I got to write her stories. And I loved writing these stories. I totally ignored the pre-assigned themes, though. I didn't write about my doll's birthday or holidays with her family. No, I wrote about kissing boys, traveling the world, and having a pony as a pet. I let my imagination run wild with fun, adventure, and arguably a little bit of adolescent scandal. And at 12, I just knew that I loved making up stories, using my imagination, and that was part of it. But as an adult, I can see that it was bigger than that these stories and all of my made-up stories were an escape from issues I didn't know how to process or articulate. An escape from deeper stories I had been telling myself my whole life, and then carried with me long into adulthood. Stories like, you're only as worthy as you are successful. So get good grades, make a lot of money, have the perfect marriage, and make it all look easy too. Or, if men are attracted to you, physically or mentally, but ideally both, then, and only then, are you interesting and valuable as a woman. And perhaps my most pervasive story of all. If they really knew you, they'd leave you. So try to be perfect and make sure nobody finds out that you're not. I can see more clearly now what I couldn't see at 12. I was trying to fill the hole my father left with stories that explained why he was gone. I told myself that I was hard to love. Because wouldn't he have stayed if it were easy? It was a year ago, as I sat writing that letter to my father, that I finally started to see some of the stories I had been telling myself and realized the patterns they had created in my life. A lack of honesty and authenticity in my personality, my relationships, my work. A consistent hum of anxiety over all of my past mistakes and all of the ones I knew I would inevitably make in the future. And the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, sabotage of any relationship that claimed to offer me love without condition. But in that moment, I also realized that I could control the narrative. I'd already been telling myself these stories for over 30 years, so clearly I had the power and the capacity to tell myself some new ones. I could write my stories, not just those of an 18-inch plastic doll designed to look like me. And as it turns out, I'm not the first person to figure this out. Psychologists call it cognitive framing, which means that we use our past experiences to create a story in our minds that we can then reference in the future. And that story, or the cognitive frame, it affects our choices, our values, our behavior, and how we respond to every new experience that comes after it. Simply put, our stories shape our lives. But we can change them. And I think it's about time we did. So while you can't go back and change the actual events and experiences that you've been through, you can change the story you've told yourself about them, and about yourself, and about who you will be and how your life will unfold from here on out. So that's what I've been doing. I've been telling myself some new stories. Stories like, it's safe to be myself. I'm allowed to make mistakes. And I am worthy of love exactly as I am. And that letter that I wrote to my dad a year ago, I doubt he'll ever read it. But it was for me anyway. For me to give voice to and give back the stories that were never really mine to keep. The stories that he gave me by leaving. And now I know how to change those stories to the ones that are true for me, to the ones that encourage me to take bigger risks as a writer, to the ones that help me cultivate honest, authentic, connected relationships, and to the ones that empower me to share my story on stage with all of you. Thank you.